Okay, so you're building apps and prototypes without writing the code, but you feel like your AI could be that little bit better at avoiding some of those annoying errors that keep popping up. There are some great models out this week to help you with that. Should you upgrade to using Gemini Pro 3 or the new Opus 4.5, which is going to give you a faster path to a shipped app. In this video, we're going to compare these models from the perspective of a professional software developer and build a micro SaaS without writing any of the code. So for the last few days, I've been using Gemini Pro 3 and Opus 4.5 on a number of production builds so I can share what I think of each model. And I'll also share what set of tools and models I'm using the most at the moment. Okay, so let's take a look at the pricing. So Opus 4.5 is considerably cheaper than it was before. It was quite prohibitive. I didn't really use it much before because it was so expensive, but it's had a considerable price drop. However, it's still over double the price of Gemini Pro 3. That is a big price difference. So next up, we have model throughput. So that's essentially how fast is the model. And I didn't realize this was such a big factor for me until Haiku and Cheetah came along. Using a model that's really responsive, that's really fast is just a joy. And I can guide the model more. I can kind of iteratively move it along. So if we want to compare Gemini Pro here against Opus 4.5 in terms of speed, there's a moderate difference between both. Okay, so when new models come out, the companies produce their own benchmarks. They're specific tests that they run themselves, but I much prefer to look at artificialanalysis.ai. They do their independent breakdowns of each model. So on its general testing here, Gemini Pro is scoring a 73. We have a 70 for Claude, and then GPT 5.1 High is at 70. So very comparable. On the coding index, there's a marginal difference between each as well. Looking through the rest of the benchmarks here, all these models are very comparable. There's not a big difference between each one. Okay, enough of the benchmarks. Let's actually test it out for ourselves. So first test I'm going to do is a quick design test. A couple of words on our sponsor, Gamma. If you do any kind of presentations or communication in your job, it's really worth checking out their new AI. A huge part of what I do on a daily basis is presentation and communication. I recently came back from Dubai, where I worked with companies training their teams in AI software development. So there were 2 days of workshops and presentations, and Gamma was a really big help with preparing the material. So in my mind, Gamma is the GOAT of AI presentation platforms. The benefit of Gamma is they've studied millions of presentation decks, and their AI helps make your pitch not only engaging visually, but also gives you the right hooks to keep readers and viewers engaged. It can be really daunting to start with a blank state, and Gamma really solves that problem. You can drop in a doc, website content, anything you can think of. I've even used their API to help a company generate automated quarterly reports. Content is in there, it's going to format everything appropriately, the kind of annoying tweaking that used to take me hours. You can generate images, and they have every image model you can think of, including the brand new Nana Banana from Google, which is pretty awesome. They also have this really great prompt guides. I've left a link for that in the description down below. There are prompts there for consultants, marketeers, sales, and more. As a builder, you probably occupy most of those roles on any given day, so we're checking them out. Okay, so I've used voice chat here to give a initial prompt. I haven't gone very specific on the design. I've kept it really quite high level. When I'm doing prompts myself, or I know exactly what I want, I get much more specific. But here, I just want to leave it quite vague, and let's see what the models can produce. The one thing I love about Cursor is you can pick any model you want. And that's important to me because on any given week or month, one model might be better at a particular task than another. I don't want to get locked into one tool that tells me I just need to use one style of model. So here we can actually pick both Opus 4.5 and Gemini. So here you can see I'm selecting Opus 4.5 Thinking, and it's available at the Sonnet 4.5 cost during the first couple of weeks. But then, of course, it's going to go up, and it's got a 200K context window. I'm also using plan mode here as well, just to see what it comes back with. So I vibe coded a nice stopwatch manager here to keep track of the timing, and it took about 19 seconds, and we have our first plan. It's asking me for what sections I want to include. I'm going to be greedy and go for all of these sections here. We've got a decent plan here from Opus, and we're just going to fire ahead with that to-do list. But we're just up on about 7 minutes now on our stopwatch timer, and you can see that we have a fully designed page, And I didn't even open the browser here. So basically, Cursor has opened the browser. What the model is doing now, in this case, Opus, it's actually going through, taking screenshots and making sure everything looks okay. So that's a recent development in Cursor that I really like. You can set it off to work and it'll go and check its own work. It spins up the browser, takes a look at the design, see if there's anything wrong, checks the console logs. When we're working autonomously, that is a big time saving. So the actual design only took about 4 minutes, I'd say, but we're now up on 8 minutes and it's just doing its own testing. I mean, right now it's actually working on mobile optimization. It's tested the breakpoints and it's saying that it's not working the way it likes to, and it's actually making some amendments here. Okay, so the full process took about 9 minutes, and I will say that it was only about 5 minutes was needed to actually do the design, and the next few minutes were used by Cursor to actually test out to make sure everything looked okay. So I'm actually really impressed with this as a first pass. One of the best designs I've seen generated by AI. We have a nice little logo up here. I even like the it's even like a little bit like an I to a P. It's got our little shadow features here. Really nice performance here from Opus. It's going to be hard to beat for Gemini. Okay, so with Gemini here, 27 seconds just to get our plan in place. So it's fairly comparable to Opus 4.5. And we've got 2 questions here instead of the 4 or 5 we got from Opus. So a shorter, more concise plan here from Gemini, but could be just as good. And we have 8 to-dos here to run through. So Gemini finished up here at, let me just check, just at 4 minutes and 22 seconds. So that's about the same time it took Opus to build out the website. However, it hasn't opened up the browser and it hasn't done any kind of testing. So that might indicate that it might not be the best at tool calling in this case, or at least not in the case of Cursor and the browser. So here's what we got from Gemini. And, 6 months ago, I would have said, wow, this was a great design. But we're just so used to these bland AI designs now that this is just run of the mill. And I have to say, what Opus produced here was so many levels above this. So I simply can't recommend Gemini 3 for design. I mean, it's clean and it's simple, but it's very AI generic. I'm a little bit surprised at this because I have used Gemini in other cases to develop out landing pages and it does an okay job. This is really kind of bottom of the barrel. A code comparison, it's pretty tidy from Gemini, no real complaints, but we did get a whole lot more from Opus in this case. A detailed README talking through the features, design system, etc. So definitely extra points for Opus in this case. Again, on the time comparison, 9 minutes for Opus 4.5 and 4 minutes for Gemini. I'm going to say this is neck and neck because Opus had the page designed at about 4 or 5 minutes and just at a much higher quality. And Gemini didn't even try and use the browser to do any kind of testing. So an absolute win for Opus on this test. Okay, so let's test our models on a real Microsoft app build. Got our landing page set up for Instaplan. Now let's actually build out the app. So again, I've given it a really basic prompt here. Essentially, I'm saying that I want to create this app called Instaplan. We're going to upload a 2D image. We're going to use the Gemini Pro 3 image preview API along with a prompt to get it to convert. And that's all I'm going to give it for now. And let's see how it goes. And of course, we're going to give the identical prompt to Gemini. So if you're not familiar with APIs, it's basically a way for our application that we're building to be able to go and chat with another application. So in this case, we want our application Instaplan to talk to the Gemini Pro image preview API. We're going to send over an image, it's going to do its magic, and then send it back again. And what we have when we're working with APIs is API documentation. So you can go to the Gemini 3 Pro image preview here in Google Cloud to get the information that you need. Now, I had some difficulties with this because I'm based in Ireland, and right now you can't get access to the Pro Image Preview API, but I could get access to it via OpenRouter. We can go and find the API via OpenRouter, and if you haven't used it before, it's fantastic. You can get access to a whole load of different models. Essentially, what we have here is a quick start section, and that gives us a little kind of code snippet to show us how we might use it. Using TypeScript as our example, so you can select that there and just copy that. Here is an example of how to connect to the API, and I will store the API key in the .env file Open Router API key. So basically, I've just pasted in that little snippet there. So our AI knows how to connect. I've also just added this extra line here to tell it that we're going to use Next.js as the framework. If you're not familiar with Next.js, it's just a really great starter framework for any kind of landing page you want to generate and any kind of app that you want as well. Okay, so we've got our prompt ready to go. We're in plan mode and we've got Opus 4.5 and I'm just going to hit go. Okay, so straight up, Opus has given us our questions here. Do I want a complex app or a full app with history, gallery, etc.? I'm just going to go for the simple one right now. And then what kind of an aesthetic do we want to go for? I could just go ahead with the landing page aesthetic, but I'd like to start from scratch here again to give Gemini and Opus a chance to show us another type of design that they might create. So it's given us a plan here. One thing that I noticed is it said it was Next.js 14. I updated that to Next.js 16, which is the latest version at the time of making this video, and happy with that and just went ahead and clicked build. So I've got exactly the same prompt here. Going to paste that in and use Gemini 3 Pro and plan mode. So Gemini didn't ask any clarifying questions. In this case, it just jumped straight in. So let's take a look at its pretty brief plan, to be honest. Okay, so just about 4 minutes, 40 seconds, and Opus has finished. Again, it fired up a browser for me. I didn't get the same thing happen with Gemini again, which indicates not great tool calling, I guess. So according to our instructions here from Opus, we're going to need to put in our API key in the .env.local file. So let's go ahead and hit Control B, open up our sidebar, and then we've got an env local that's been created for us already, which is great. And we're going to paste in our API key here that we got from Open Router. So if you want to get that, you go to Open Router API keys. It's in the top right-hand corner. So Gemini finished in around about 4 minutes as well, kind of like pretty much the same time, but it didn't open up the browser for us, so we're going to have to do that separately. Now, it's telling us that we need to open our localhost 3000. It's telling us how to run the development server. Now, Opus actually went and did that for us, but if you want to do that yourself, you need to open up the terminal. So hit Command J or Control J, or you can click the button up the top here to open that. And then we can see that there's no other processes running, or the agent hasn't gone and start this for us. So I'm going to hit npm run dev here, hit return, and it's going to open on localhost 3001. So if I command click on this, it should open our browser here. And here is our Gemini 3 design, which looks disappointing, to be honest, really disappointing. Gemini is not doing well here. Okay, so on our Opus version here, I'm just going to drop in our initial image. Now, that was a nice little effect there that we saw. We got some nice instructions down here. Just going to pop open our terminal here as well so we can see exactly what's going on. And let's hit generate. So straight away, we've got an issue. Let's check it out. Okay, it's telling me I have a problem with my API key not being configured. Should have probably restarted the server perhaps. Sometimes when you set up environment variables, you need to restart the server in order to have them attached. But usually Next.js takes care of this, so I'm not sure what's going on. Okay, so I've tried to restart and I'm still getting this error back that my API key is not configured. So I'm a little bit stuck. So what we do here is we get the AI to add a little bit more logging. So logging basically gives us a better understanding of what's going wrong. API generate is giving us a 500 error. So I want that to be a little bit more detailed. Why are we getting that error? So let's just have a chat with Opus. I'm giving Opus a little note here. I'm getting a 500 error on this /API generate call, and I'm also getting this alert in the interface. Can you add some logging to the terminal so we can diagnose further, and any other recommendations that you have? So that's what Opus. I'm just going to hit return. So just like in most cases, this was actually my human error. I actually had a typo when I put in the Open Router API key. Opus pretty much fixed that right away, pretty much saying, silly human, you've made a little error here, something that I would never do. And let's see if it works now. So I'm just going to drop in our image. Let's close this up here, our sidebar, Control B, and then hit generate 3D render. Now, another little error response here is telling me that it's calling the Google Gemini 2.0 Flash, but that's not the model that we want. I'm going to paste in this little error response here. Go back to my code snippet as a reminder where it says Gemini 3 Pro image preview. So I'm just going to copy that. So little error correction here. I've copied that in. I've also copied in the example and I'm saying, take a look at the terminal error. We are calling the Flash API, not the Gemini Preview API in the snippet. So this is quite common when you're working with an API. Generally, when you're developing apps yourself, you don't tend to run into these issues quite as much. But anyone who's been in my community that has issues tends to be when it's working with outside services. So you do need a little bit of troubleshooting to get to where you want to go. So let's try it again. Okay, so look at this. This is pretty impressive. You can't really fault it. So we've got our cooking area here, the table, the couch, relaxation, sleep, walk-in closet is spot on. We have our laundry, bathroom, exactly as laid out here in the floor plan. Pretty cool. So all in all, this took about 10 minutes of Opus's time and about 30 of mine, just API keys, doing a little bit of troubleshooting on the API. But for 30 minutes to have built this full app and a landing page, that's pretty good. So I'm just going to fix the same issue that I duplicated when I was working with Gemini, and I'm going to align the timing on both to make sure that that's not accounted for in the testing. So Gemini has been pretty bad at running Cursor's browser and at going and running the server itself. So I'm going to see if I can just push it to do that. Just saying run the server and open it in the browser. Got a spinning widget here that just isn't spinning. And I've got nothing showing up in my logs here. Okay, so it actually did work and we have our image through here looking pretty good. The image of course does come from Gemini, so that's pretty cool. But just in terms of interface here, not a fan. So adjusting for time here, pretty much both of these models generated this app within around 10 minutes. Now, I did make a slight adjustment here to Gemini because I gave it the added knowledge of knowing that I made a mistake on the API key. Final thoughts on the comparison. I think it's pretty obvious. Gemini did work and Opus did work, but Gemini's interface here is just kind of terrible. It didn't give me enough details in the planning section. It doesn't use the browser tool. It doesn't spin up the terminal itself. It's not interacting with Cursor as well as it should do. So on all fronts here, I think Opus just did such a better job. The plan was better, the design was better, it handled the browser, it opened up its own terminal, it ran the development server itself, a whole lot more agentic than Gemini was in this case. And I'm going to say that's what I generally get from the Anthropic models, whether it's Haiku, Sonnet, or Opus. They tend to just work agentically a whole lot better. That's why people love Claude Code, because it just tends to work well. Okay, so when we're finished building our landing page and our micro SaaS, how much did that cost us? Well, big difference here. Opus was about $11, Gemini was about $2. That's a considerable difference. But at the amount I bill for an hourly rate, or most developers or product managers would, this doesn't really matter a whole lot. I'm happy to spend this kind of money to get high quality and not have to spend my own time and hours fixing issues. So for many, this cost difference, if you're getting higher quality and better outputs, is well worth it. In reality, what I'm probably going to end up doing is just relying more on Sonnet 4.5 and Haiku, and then also Composer from Cursor that I love. And then I'll bring in Opus for some of the heavy design lifting. Let's say I want to design a component, a landing page, I'll spin up Opus for that. And then for most of the grunt work that I'm doing, I'll probably just use Composer and mix in a bit of Sonnet and Haiku with that. Now, one other caveat here is this $10 or $11 we're seeing here is at Sonnet pricing. It's not yet at Opus pricing, because for the next couple of weeks, Cursor is offering a discount on Opus 4.5. This chart will actually be somewhere up here when full pricing is initiated. So it is a consideration for most, and you just need to make the decision for yourself. Okay, so based on my testing and what I've been building with for the last couple of weeks, what is my December stack? Well, I'm definitely including Opus 4.5 in terms of design, maybe some planning, and for getting myself out of difficult spots. It just has great tool usage and it seems to be a really smart model, but it is expensive. So next up, we've got Sonnet 4.5. I'll be using that sparingly as well because, to be honest, what I seem to be using most of the time is Composer from Cursor. It's just super fast, it's very iterative. I can kind of work quickly through problems and I can guide and steer the model exactly how I want to, which is just really fun and useful for me. So in the A tier, we have GPT 5.1. Fond of this model, basically very good at very surgical refactors, where Opus, Sonnet, and the Claude series are very verbose and they try to achieve a lot. GPT 5.1 is straight to the point. So if you're working in an existing code base or you want to be very tight around changes that you want to make, I recommend the GPT series. Then Haiku is also a alternative to Composer if you don't have access to Cursor and you're using Claude Code or OpenCode or some other model like that. I'm going to rank Gemini down in B tier just based on my testing over the last couple of days. I have been really waiting for this model to come out for a very long time. It was hotly anticipated. It's got very hyped up, but I'm just not seeing strong affinity with this model for coding. I believe it's very strong in other areas, but just on the coding level, it's just not really doing it for me. So hopefully that improves over time, but for now, I'm just going to keep it at arm's length. And then these are perfectly good models, GLM and Quen Code. They're more budget, very affordable, down around the $3 mark. So if budget is your thing, these are very high performing models for the cost, just not as high performing as these. I'm happy to spend the money just to get that extra quality. So just to see what I could get out of Opus with an extra 10 minutes, I decided to push the model a little bit further. You can take a screenshot here and drop it in, and we can do little things like annotate. So maybe I want to say, there's a mat on the floor here or something like that. I can also set various different design styles that I like. So in this case, I'm going to go with Japandi, and then I'm going to generate the visualization. Here we have our generated layout, and I can swap between various different styles. I can have one from above, and you can see this Japandi style inspiration here and muted colors. And then we've got our 3D version as well. So we could also have multiple different versions here. So you could build out this kind of app for any kind of e-commerce brand, or build it out once and then go around to all the furniture brands and see if you want to pull in their API. This could actually be a really good app to help them sell and visualize their content. So I pulled in an API here for the shopping list. So this is basically a generated API at the moment. It will load up furniture and give you examples of what is seen within the image. Again, all of this is completely done by Opus. I didn't do a lot of extra prompting. Plenty of videos, just check back on the channel. I'm going to be showing you some more advanced design prompting over the coming weeks. I'd love to hear how you guys have got on with Opus and Gemini. Do you have a different opinion than I do? And if so, why? I'd love to see that in the comments. If you find this useful, I'll be putting out a lot of videos like this, so don't forget to like and subscribe. It really helps lift this kind of content in your algorithm. And if you want to learn how to build these kind of applications from scratch as a complete beginner, you should check out the course and community. It's at switchdimension.com, where I take you all the way through from very little knowledge to being able to build and launch a full AI web app. Okay, see you